Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Phil and I'm indeed here, and today I wanted to kind of come at you with a sort of unedited impressions on what I have felt with God of War Ragnarok, merely because I have just ended up beating God of War Ragnarok for the first time. I was going to be streaming most of my playthrough, if not all of it, pretty much the entire time, but I chose yesterday to go ahead and stop that because I figured there was a lot of things that were holding me back from really enjoying the game as a whole. One of them being the fact that they talk a lot, I think, in this game. Obviously, there are tons and tons of things for each of the characters to be going over and talking to each other about, and one of the more consistent parts that continuously became a thorn in my side during the stream would be that any moment I had to try to take a rest or maybe, have a moment to myself to think for one reason or another, the game would sit there and decide, okay, now's the time to fill the dead air with a bunch of space, a bunch of, stories of yore and what have you. And while that's all really good for world building, ultimately it makes for a really terrible stream game. So I opted to go ahead and just kind of do my own thing. And because of that, I'm able to beat the game in a much faster way and was able to turn around and, from what I felt was the 50% mark, beat the game relatively quickly. I put an additional 10 to 15 hours in the span of one day because, hey, I've got all of Thanksgiving week off. I'll use my final PTO to do that. So yeah, let's talk about it. So first and foremost, obviously God of War Ragnarok is a continuation of God of War 2018 storyline, and for those of you who haven't played it, there's going to be some obviously heavy spoilers to that, so do yourselves a favor, go out there, pick up a copy of God of War 2018. If you guys are getting PS5s, maybe sometime during the Black Friday or during the holidays, I would suggest going ahead and I think that the PS5 comes with a Sony collection where you can buy, or you can have like God of War 2018 just there as a free download. So go ahead and definitely give the game a shot. It's certainly worth it. But as a continuation coming on from Kratos and Atreus are sort of in this like weird perpetual state of training. That Kratos knows and fears that there's something coming, mainly because he saw the prophecy of his end, the prophecy of Ragnarok, essentially at the end of 2018, while Atreus is kind of unaware of that slowly. And as luck would have it, obviously certain things occur within the storyline that basically remove their staves of protection and open them up to the eyes of Odin and the rest of the Aesir's that would be walking around. And they have a bit of an engagement that I think is at first kind of like off-putting, and I'll get to why that is in a second. But ultimately, this leads them down the path of what essentially is going to be them going towards Ragnarok. And yeah, it's great for what it is, and ultimately I definitely found myself enjoying the storyline, but there's something about increasing the stakes that always loses that sense of true personal storytelling that I really enjoyed from 2018. The story between Kratos and Atreus definitely has a lot of its really fantastic moments here, and you see amazing character development on the front of these two characters, and all the moments that these two share together are absolutely incredible, if not kind of a sort of weird character assassination of Kratos, just a tiny little bit. I say that because by the end of this game, Kratos is very much a different person, and that's fine, but it is very strange to think of like God of War 3 Kratos and then God of War Ragnarok Kratos, and how those two individuals might as well just be entirely strangers from one another. But it does go to show the lengths that this game will go in terms of their overall character development. Now, ultimately, I feel like, there's obviously going to be tons of new characters, many of which we haven't seen before. There was a lot of great characters that showed up in God of War 2018, but you sort of got this feeling that everything kind of felt very closed off. It was very much a story that focused mainly around Kratos and Atreus and the Aesir gods that were effectively chasing them, going after them and trying to make sure that Kratos wasn't just there to kill them and what have you. Whereas now, this game is just replete. What is the word I'm looking for? It's just got so many fucking different characters, so many different individuals from all different walks of life, to the point where I would even argue it's to a detriment almost, because there's a lot of characters who they don't try to have like an accent. There's not like this catch-all like accent that people try to follow. You know how like in 2018 Baldur definitely sounded like he belonged in the world, and like Freya, Mimir, all the people in 2018 2018 have this way of speaking that still cements them in the world of God of War and makes it feel very fantastical. It's not necessarily like as crazy Shakespearean as something like Final Fantasy XIV's writing, where everyone's talking in ye old English or something like that, but it definitely like lined up and felt great. Then you had like certain characters like Brock and Sindri, who, because they're dwarves and because we're, you know, where dwarves come from in this universe, like it makes sense that they're definitely much more different than everybody else. They're oddities, and the game doesn't really try to make them anything more than what they are, and it works for them. But then Odin kind of comes across as a sleazy car dealership salesman. I saw someone make him akin to like a 90s New York pimp, and I think that works too. And Thor is being played by the guy from who's Opie in fucking Anarchy, the Sons of Anarchy, I think it was, and he might as well just be that character through and through. There's a lot of characters you start kind of rolling up into that feel like they're not like they're kind of removed from the world of God of War as a whole, and it makes everything feel so much more, it pulls me out of it, I think, a lot more. That's not to say that the acting is bad by any means. In fact, this is obviously, it's a Sony game, and Sony first party games love and relish in the opportunity to really put their actors, their chops, really put them forward and really give these guys the room they need to grow and become amazing characters. And there's definitely moments in which that is the case here. There are tons and tons of amazing reads, just incredible character depth just coming through the performances, and I appreciated everything I saw. There was just a little, I just wish that they had kind of like some more respect towards like trying to make things feel ethereal and otherworldly as opposed to just some guys. I think there's a character that shows up later on that's related to Freya that I love that guy, but man oh man, does he just sound fucking strange, and it's just really it's out of this world. Basically, it feels like a character in another game, and I think a lot of that comes down to there's some more I think even Lau put this best when I was talking about this the other day. There's some more quippy writing. There's a lot of like that weird Marvel-esque like quippy writing in this game, which really, it doesn't suck, but they basically do the same joke like 9 or 10 times. A viewer of mine, Gasmax, was able to come in there and basically call it out for what it was, and he said, yeah, they do this joke where Kratos is like, oh wow, Kratos, you used to use the harp, you think we can ever hear that again? And Kratos would be like, no. And that joke is done 10 times in the entire, like more so in the entire game. It's just done to death, and it kind of sucks. But ultimately, there's some good twister-roonies that happen around every now and again in the storyline. I appreciated it for what it was. I think it's a really fantastic ending to the Kratos and Atreus storyline. It is really good. And don't get me wrong, this is effectively an ending. There is an open-ended thing that happens, but it's not in the sense of like, oh, there's going to be sequel after sequel that comes out. It's more so just a really nice kind of like climax, and it feels great. Now, as far as like the gameplay goes, there's really not a whole lot of changes, I feel like, from 2018 to Ragnarok. I will say that combat does feel better. It's definitely a lot snappier than it was in 2018. They definitely have combat has more of an identity. It feels like where 2018 was sort of an experiment, they didn't necessarily know what they were doing, and there was a couple of things that they really wanted to kind of like move away from. For instance, the idea that God of War was moving directly away from like the more traditional character action titles that they were back in the day to a much more focused kind of like Last of Us melee centric video game, and it feels like they really kind of understood what they were trying to do with this one and implemented a whole lot more tools to make that feel better. But it doesn't come without its like weird caveats. For instance, you do get crowded a lot more easily in this game than I think in 2018, even though you have far more tools at your disposal. There's a lot more verticality at play because you can use the chaos blades to do grapple hook sections and things of that nature. But in order to sort of counterbalance that, they just kind of throw tons and tons of different enemies at you, and it's a lot of the really annoying types of enemies where essentially you'll have like 2 or 3 melee dudes who are constantly on your ass at all times, and 1 or 2 like range dudes sitting in the back somewhere. And for whatever reason, I put this as an attest to, or attest this to, I think I have a cursed copy of the video game, because those people who have been watching me play this game have seen that I've had like probably the most glitches that anyone has encountered, both visually visual and gameplay breaking glitches that anyone has encountered in like their entire course of the playthrough of Ragnarok. Everyone I've spoken to has said this is the most non-glitch like game, and I've run into nothing but glitches that consistently pull me out of the experience. And I don't know if that is something I need to blame entirely on the game or just this weird code I downloaded from PSN, but it certainly did a lot of things that really pulled me into the experience and made streaming that game feel so much more worse in comparison. So I'm kind of glad that I actually stopped streaming it, decided to just beat it on my own and what have you. But moving on, back to the combat, you know, you really do get crowded, and a lot of the difficulty sort of comes from everyone constantly fucking yelling at you that, you know, hey, there's someone behind you, there's someone behind you. And for one reason or another, because the down in the D-pad is reserved for another thing that comes up later in the game. The quick turn now has an L, like a modifier button that you need to press on it, and it took me a while to even get like used to that, to the point where I barely use quick turn. I just kind of turned my character around, whereas like quick turn in God of War 2018 was so paramount in combat to make sure that you weren't just constantly surrounded. But at the same time, even with all the fucking enemies, because there was a ton of enemies they would throw at you in 2018, Ragnarok, for one reason or another, still felt so much more overwhelming by comparison, and I don't know why that is. I think it's because like the enemy types are far more varied this time around, which was one of my biggest pet peeves in 2018, was you were just fighting the same enemies over and over and over again. But this time around, there's absolutely tons of different enemy variety, and it really serves to make the combat feel fun. It's just that a lot of these kinds of, basically near the end of the game, there's going to be situations in which they hit you with a bunch of mid-boss characters and a bunch of ads as well. And normally I'd be fine with that if the AI kept up to snuff, but I'm wondering if the reason why the AI was not as good in this game was because of my cursed copy, or because the AI took a dive. Because I remember Atreus being an absolute fucking gift to just, you know, God, from God themselves down to us in 2018. Atreus really held his own and did some really cool shit. But in this one, Atreus has his own new skill set for a reason, but he has his own new skill set that essentially you have to unlock, and when he gets more EXP, you have to throw more skills into him, or else he just doesn't do anything. And even as a fully unlocked skill tree that I had Atreus at, there were several moments in which him and other guest party AI would just not be up to snuff, and that's the worst feeling, is that they would sit there and consistently tell you, hey, there's someone behind you, hey, there's someone up there on the ridge, and the AI would just be sitting there kind of doing nothing. And I was so taken out of the experience, because in 2018 Atreus was a fucking monster, and in this one it feels like they really toned down the AI. And I was playing on Give Me Balance, so it wasn't like the battles were hard, they were just frustrating because I was constantly overwhelmed, hoping to have someone to have my back, and no one ever did, so that didn't help. You know, there's tons of puzzles. There's a new sort of design philosophy they have. So you're gonna basically have the ability to go to all 9 realms in this game, which is really cool. One of the realms, however, is sort of a throwaway realm until a much later section, which is Niflheim. I think Niflheim at the moment, when you first start out, is sort of an area to do training and to accomplish like one side mission essentially. But for the most part, you do get to actually venture out. You see a hell of a lot more going on, and it is fun for the most part. The missions that are there, the actual story-based missions are really cool. But there's this moment where at the end of every story mission, one character, it doesn't matter who, will turn to you and go, hey, we have some time. Do you think we should go and complete some side missions? Do you think, guys, we should do some side missions? And the game will not shut the fuck up about it. In fact, the game doesn't shut the fuck up entirely throughout your playthrough. I think a lot of people have basically, it's just well known at this point that so many fucking instances of the game basically playing itself, like anytime there's a puzzle that shows up, the characters will immediately sit there and yell at you and say, hey, I know you're looking and trying to, like, I don't know, put together things and play the video game, but why don't I just go ahead and like tell you what's gonna happen every single time, which made it really frustrating, because at that point it was just sort of, it was less me trying to actually play the game and more being like pulled along by my dick by every other AI person who was running around with me, you know. And it sucked. It sucked because there was moments where I did actually feel cool eureka moments when solving the puzzles, and this could have been mitigated like so easily. It could have just been, you walk up to a character and it's a button prompt, like in fucking Uncharted. Like, obviously it's Sony Santa Monica, it's not the same studio, but like they should have stolen that from Uncharted, where it's like, okay, I'm confused as where to go next, let me go ask the guy, like the other like AI, and see what they think is the best course of action here, and that would have been so much better, as opposed to just all the characters basically treating you like a fucking baby, which it did help, because when you stream the game, you have streamer rot, which makes it impossible to fucking do puzzles, but ultimately, I just wanted to play the game myself, and the game just refused. It constantly pulled you in different directions, and it tried to do so in a way that felt like natural, but it was so game-like. It was basically, the game was just trying to remind me that there was so much more content around the corner, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the way that the game constantly tried to pull me in several different directions and never made it really feel like it was my choice to do anything. It was just something that the game was suggesting to do. But ultimately, the design now is essentially go into a realm, you do a mission, and then at the very end of it, you unlock the side mission content. And for what it's worth, a lot of the side missions are pretty great. They're really important for lore reasons. You definitely will meet characters, and essentially those characters will have their stories told throughout these realms. And for the most part, a lot of them are relatively great, you know what I mean? They're nowhere near as bad as like a traditional, like, you know, side mission in any other video game. They actually have some more forethought put through them. There's some cutscenes that happen every now and again. It is genuinely enjoyable to go through the side mission content, but I do think on some level it is still very much a game that suffers from its lack of just having one core area you can build around, because obviously Midgard was made so much more larger in comparison to a lot of the realms that, like, and the realms are huge, don't get me wrong. There's tons to explore in this game. It's just, you really do kind of feel that loss of direction, and that's just sort of the case when you basically separate things left and right and make it so you have to now, instead of just doing one area really good, you have to do multiple areas like kind of okay. I do kind of still prefer 2018's approach to its design, where it's just one core area, but I understand why the realm hopping journey was necessary in Ragnarok, and honestly I wouldn't have it any other way. And finally, I mean, if you've been watching the video, you already know this game is a looker, it's a sounder, its production quality is out of this fucking world. It's a AAA experience through and through. It's a Sony first party game, of course it is. It's one of the most beautiful games on the platform right now. I'm currently playing it on the PS5 version. I'm wondering how it runs in the PS4, because 2018 was an absolute fucking jaw dropper as well. So I'm hoping that with how everything runs and feels on the PS5, that it still is kind of comparable to the PS4 version. I am playing at 60 frames per second. That is absolutely the preferred way of play, no matter what. If you can get it to be as stable as humanly possible at the highest of frame rates, I would suggest playing it like that, because the action game at 30 frames, when I played it on 2018, I think 2018 has a 30 frames per second option. I don't know if this one has the same. I think this one actually has a 120 frames per second option, which is really cool if you have a PS5 and a variable refresh rate TV. It's very cool, and I'm really hoping that a lot more AAA developers sort of take heed from it. Another really cool shout out is the immense amount of accessibility options this game has. I think it's really cool. I barely use any of them. I think it's weird that I think they put things like motion blur and aim assist in accessibility. I get why it's there, but I'm normally used to those games like options being in like video or like game options and stuff like that. But like, there are tons of different fucking accessibility options that essentially allow you to customize the game in a way and play it in a way that feels comfortable to you. I immediately, one of the major things I went to was the navigation assist, I think it was called. It's the traversal assist, I'm sorry, where instead of having to press circle on everything, you can just kind of walk up to stuff and your character will just automatically go towards it. There's still a couple of prompts you have to press, like when you have to grapple. The game's not going to obviously make you grapple everywhere. That would be a fucking mess. But it was really a great quality of life adjustment that I absolutely fucking loved. So shout outs to them for doing that. But yeah, ultimately, I think as much as I enjoyed this game, it is not my game of the year. For those of you who've seen my VGA video at this point, you definitely know and understand probably why. I was definitely expecting a lot more from God of War Ragnarok, and there's sections of the game that I enjoyed way more than other ones, but I can't talk about it for fear of spoilers and things of that nature. All I'm going to say is that there is a lot of gold to be found here. If you are a huge God of War War fan, this is absolutely an amazing ending, amazing send-off to an incredible character in the form of Kratos, and it is something where it does on some level make me think about the future. Like, what exactly are the next God of War games gonna be about? God of War intentions. But you know, I enjoyed my time with it. I think that anybody who's looking for an amazing story, an amazing game, are definitely gonna find it here. I just feel like ultimately the experience that I was left with, it's not as good as 2018, but it's definitely up there in the video game echelon. So don't sleep on this game. Absolutely give it a shot. If you guys actually like this kind of form of video, I'm still kind of wondering if I should do these kinds of videos instead, where I'm just sort of staring at an Audacity screen talking about a video game, as opposed to just like writing my impressions down, because I feel like this is a lot more natural. I can kind of convey my thoughts a lot more easily this way, as opposed to just doing that. Yeah, you let me know what you guys think about this review, impressions, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to give it a score. All I'm going to say is you should definitely go out and try this game if you are a God of War fan, and if you're not, play 2018. Fuck it, play the whole series. Play all the God of War games. They're great, except maybe the PSP ones. Don't fuck around with that. Anyways, shout out to my editor Wolfen for, I'm gonna basically be giving him this file at the odd hour at like what is it? It is Wednesday, 11/23, 2022 at 5 o'clock. I'm gonna give this to him and just basically be like, surprise, go make this video for me. So shout outs to him. But yeah, everybody, thanks so much. Do that damn YouTube thing if you want. If you don't, hey, whatever. We also live stream at Twitch. I don't know what my next playthrough is gonna be. Probably Evil West. We also got Crisis Core coming up, so I'm very excited for all those things. Much love to all y'all. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Peace.